Let's talk about Elune. Elune is the oldest standing goddess in World of Warcraft. We have people like Chris Mason basically resisting ever talking about Elune, right? So for Chris Mason, the idea about Elune was that she would be this sinister figure that no one would ever really know anything about. We know that Chris Mason is no longer at WoW, but it does appear as if the writers, the original writers of the lore, is respecting his wishes. Elune, being the longest standing member of any god squad that we know about in World of Warcraft, is still the one we know nothing about. And when I say nothing, I mean absolutely all. Zero. The things we know about her is actually scary, considering there is at least 2 races on Azeroth we know of that serve her in one way or another. To some extent, the Taurens very much do serve at least a fraction of her, or at least an element of her, and we know that the Night Elves are very much the people of Elune. She is their goddess, and not even they know all that much about her, right? Or if they do, they're not saying much. So what exactly is Elune? That's the main discussion that I want to have tonight. What is it that makes Elune what she is, and who is she? Is there a way for us to figure out what kind of god she is at least? Well, I started looking at, because in Shadowlands for the first time we're starting to hear about things that Elune did. We started to learn a little bit more about how Elune works, and really everything started with Tyrande. When Tyrande became the Night Warrior, that was the first time we actually saw a direct impact from Elune on the actual physical world. Prior to that, Elune has been very sort of handoffish on the whole, on the whole of things. There is 2, however, instances in which Elune lend her aid directly to her people. Only 2. In all of the history of World of Warcraft, only twice have Elune been directly involved, or shall we say actually indirectly directly involved, because the first time Elune actually made herself shown or known to the world was when she took Ysera's soul up into the heavens. That's the first time we saw Elune do anything. Right? Think about it. Prior to that, Elune would sometimes, they would say, Elune grant me strength, and they would cast some kind of bolt, but that wasn't actually Elune, right? That was just power flowing through someone that already had the power at their disposal. Ysera, and by the way in which she interfered with Ysera is actually far bigger than what people realize. If we're talking about the canonical lore of World of Warcraft, Ysera should not be in the Shadowlands. When dragons die, they are meant to enter into the Emerald Dream, and inside the Emerald Dream is where they are reborn. They're not meant to go to the Shadowlands, at least that's from the lore that we know. They go to the Great Tree inside the Emerald Dream, and that's where they're reborn eventually. So the fact that Ysera ends up in the Shadowlands is already a massive, massive change in how Ysera was meant to end up. This lends even more evidence and credence, I suppose, to my theory that Elune is the Winter Queen's sister. When the Winter Queen states that this is of my sister, the reason I immediately believed it and immediately thought that Elune must be the one that she's talking about is because Ysera isn't meant to be in the Shadowlands. Ysera was brought to the Shadowlands by Elune herself. And for those of you that think, well, Akalon, but remember, it's really Aenar that created Ysera, that's not true. Aenar did not create Ysera. In fact, outside of a single instance where Aenar and Ysera may have met one another, which is also kind of thin, the vast majority of evidence suggests that Aenar has never even seen Ysera. They've never met. They have nothing in common. The Watchers use the power of Elune to create Ysera and the other dragon, not of Elune, of Aenar and the other titans to create the dragonflights. But it was the construct of the titans that created the dragonflights, not the titans themselves. The titans themselves had nothing to do with the creation of the dragonflights. It was because of experiments that the Watchers, the Titan creations, were doing that led to the creation of the Dragonflight. So, in my opinion, there's far more evidence to suggest that Elune is the one that the Winter Queen was talking about, but that's not what this chat is about. The fact that Ysera is there is pretty big. The second time we see Elune actively interfere, or again, passively actively interfere, and I realize that that's an oxymoron, but it's meant to be that, is when she put the Night Elves to sleep. Now again, there's this part of me that wonders what the hell is going on. Your people are burning, they're dying, at the hands of a Banshee Queen that wants nothing more than to destroy all of them. And rather than actually interfere, rather than actually putting out the fire or doing something, Elune only puts them asleep. In fact, Tyrande herself wants to know why Elune abandoned her people. It's one of the reasons Tyrande is in the Shadowlands. She wants to know why Elune abandoned her people. So why is Elune so hesitant to interfere? Those were sort of the first things that I started to think about and sort of started to wonder about. What exactly can we learn from this? So Elune definitely isn't a hands-on god. She's not hands-on, she doesn't interfere too much. We know another thing. We know that Elune is served throughout the cosmos. Throughout the whole of the Great Beyond, Elune is served everywhere. How do we know this? Because of other Night Warriors that we meet in Ardenweald. And they're not from Azeroth. They're from a whole different world. So, and they served her too. So Elune seems to be, at least in general, or at least from what we know, one of the only god figures that is served worldwide. But then we have conflicting information on this. Xal'atath states that Elune is an upstart goddess. That Elune isn't exactly old. She's fairly new. Xal'atath also doesn't seem to have a whole lot of respect for her power. So there's that one part, I can't remember the fight exactly, but Xal'atath sort of laughs and says, oh, I thought her power would be spent already, and I guess I was wrong. So Xal'atath really didn't give a fuck about Elune. Really did not care. And you could say give Xal'atath a big grain of salt. Chris Caucus, the problem is, and I've said this way back in the day when Xal'atath's Whispers was extremely relevant, when it just came out, we can't pick and choose what we believe. Either we say we're gonna believe everything that Xal'atath says, because some of it might be true, some of it might not. We don't know which is true and which isn't. Or we say we believe nothing that Xal'atath says, because some might be true, some might not be true. Right? We can't pick and choose. The problem that I've seen, this was way back in Legion, whenever people were covering the Xal'atath Whispers, I constantly saw people picking and choosing the Xal'atath Whispers that prove their theory, and then sort of going, no, this is lies. This is lies. Because the other Whispers actually disprove the theory, and they go, no, these Whispers are lies. It's clearly that this Whisper is the truth. And I always said, well, you can't do that. Unless you have actual evidence that this theory or this Whisper is a lie, you can't just say this Whisper can't be true because it disproves my theory. Then maybe your theory is the wrong theory. And so I choose to believe everything that Xal'atath said until such time that I can actually zero in on a specific Whisper and say that was a lie. That was 100% not true. Then we can start crossing off Whispers, right? And saying, no, this is true, this is not true. So for now, I choose to believe all of our Whispers because I don't know 100% which Whispers is true and which Whispers isn't, right? All right. So as long as we sort of agree, you don't have to agree with this, by the way. You could 100% go, well, Akalon, I refuse to do that, and you have every right to do so. I'm just giving you where I come from. From my perspective, the old gods, or the Void rather, don't seem to care too much about Elune. They seem to really pay her very little respect, very little mind. They view her as sort of an aside. Something that just sort of, yeah, fine, doesn't matter. Now, let's imagine for a second that I am right, and that Elune is the sister of the Winter Queen. The Winter Queen herself doesn't seem to care all that much about her sister. She doesn't like her sister very much. This we know for a fact. She doesn't seem to care all that much about her sister. Then, of course, there's another bit of information that I only learnt just before the stream started from Apocalypse. Something that I completely missed. Elune is currently blinded. To how many of you does that come as a surprise? And how many of you don't quite know how we got there? But here's where things get really interesting. And this is from Apocalypse himself. In the Night Warrior Ascension ritual, so when Tyrande went to do the ritual, Tyrande stole an artifact called the Eye of Elune, which is destroyed in the ritual. And every time she has used her new power, she has brought an eclipse moon with her, literally covering the face of the goddess whose power she stole. How many of you didn't know that that was actually a thing? This is the kind of shit that happens on Discord, by the way. That's why you want to be in the Discord, so that you don't miss things like this. I missed it, and I'm part of fucking Discord. I mean, it's my Discord, and I missed it completely. I never even focused on the ritual itself, right? I never even focused on the ritual itself. But the relic is destroyed in the ritual. And Tobias, you need to listen to everything that was said there, not just the single artifact. After the artifact has been destroyed, every single time Tyrande has used the power of the Night Warrior, it comes as an eclipsed moon. That's literally the debuff that Tyrande has on her. The debuff when you meet Tyrande inside Torghast, she has a debuff on her, which is called the power of the Night Warrior. This debuff is literally an eclipsed moon. In other words, the moon, Elune, eclipsed, covered, unable to see, unable to act. So the power of Elune right now, she is blinded. Elune is not seeing what is happening in the world right now. At least that's the theory. It might just be a theory, and it might be completely wrong, but it's an interesting thing to think about, right? Now, it's in this Torghast scenario that stuff started to click for me. That I sort of started to look at this and go, by the way, the fact that she's blind doesn't interfere with my theory, because she can see for this theory to work. It doesn't matter. I just thought I'd mention the blindness because it's an interesting thing to think about. It's a very interesting thing to think about. The fact that Elune is blind right now might be how Tyrande actually got the power. Perhaps Tyrande gave herself a one-up. By blinding Elune first, she could take the power. So it could be of note that the power that Tyrande currently has is stolen power. It's not meant to be hers. Elune never gave it willfully or willingly. It was taken from Elune after she was blinded. So that's sort of what that theory would hinge upon, right? That's sort of the only thing that I think you can think of, or in terms of that theory. But for my theory, she doesn't have to be blind. But I stood for a while inside Torghast looking at Tyrande, looking at her health going down to almost zero and then back up to just about over a quarter of the way. So Tyrande's health is completely depleted. And when you hover over the debuff that Tyrande has on her, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, Tyrande stands and then this fucking shit just comes out of her, right? And it does damage to you as it sort of explodes out of Tyrande. Did you see that when you did the Tyrande quest the Tyrande quest in Torghast? It's sort of part of the very first Ardenweald campaign quest that you do. She stands there and the shit just explodes out of her. Every single time it explodes, her health is reduced to almost zero. Fucking almost kills her. And then you hover over the debuff that she has on her, and the debuff states that the power of Elune does damage and then heals for the exact same amount of damage that it did as long as you control it, as long as you have control over it. That's what the debuff states. So as long as you are in control of the power, it will heal the damage that it did to you. Once you lose control, it will kill you. So the health wouldn't come back. So my thinking on this immediately was, well, surely then Tyrande should have started with full health. So when she first did the ritual, her health would have been full, and it would have done a little bit of damage and she would have gotten it back. It would have done a little bit of damage and she would have gotten it back. So she would have gone from full to, say, 3/4 of the way, and then full again, and then 3/4 of the way, and then full again. Her health is almost depleted. Her health bar is now just over 1/4 of the way, and then going to 1, and just over 1/4 of the way again healing. To me, maybe that's what Blizzard is trying to show us. Tyrande is losing control of the power. The power is starting to disappear from her. Or at least it's starting... Yeah, she's running out of time, Nusa. That's a fucking great line. It's the line I was looking for. Tyrande is running out of time. She barely has enough health left to recuperate. And as I stood there and I thought about everything that we know about Elune, I constantly had this one thought that kept coming up. Broken. Elune is broken. The very fact that... So I used to believe this. Elune is the moon. The moon is balance. Balance between light and void. But what if that's not why she's signified as the moon? What if she is the moon because she is torn between the light and the darkness? So Elune has these two parts of her. One part that wants to do good and heal, and another part that wants to destroy and basically rip everything apart. And it is a constant struggle, like the health bar going down and coming back up again. A constant struggle between which one of these two actually takes hold, which one of these two actually manifests. Because before Tyrande became the Night Warrior, Elune was nothing if not healing. That's all we ever knew about her. She's the goddess of the moon. She heals people. Her power is in restoration, so to speak. Now that there is a Night Warrior, it's literally called the Vengeance of Elune. That's literally what it calls. The power that Tyrande has right now is called the Vengeance of Elune. To become the vehicle of her vengeance, so to speak. What if that's because that is literally why Xal'atath calls her an upstart goddess? Because she herself is split in two. Perhaps that's why we have two moons. Perhaps that's why Elune is shown with two moons. A Lunaria and then the Blue Child. It's the two sides of her. The Taurens, of course, worship one part of her, and the Night Elves worship another. But the reason she can never truly be a god is because of this duality within her, right? This, actually, Bob, thank you very much for that word, duality. The constant struggle that she has within herself means that she can never truly be who she needs to be. She can never truly be a god. She can never truly have the power that she needs because of these two parts of her. Now, what does that mean for the overall story? If I am correct, and the Night Warrior, or rather Elune, is the sister of the Winter Queen, how many of you agree with me that if it's true that Elune is the sister of the Winter Queen, then at some point Elune was part of the Shadowlands, or at least part of the conclave of the Shadowlands? So why did she leave? Why did Elune leave the Shadowlands? Could it be that at some point Elune was very close to the jailer? I don't want to say wife or estranged wife. I don't even want to start thinking about the idea of gods marrying each other, because at that point we have to start asking some very serious questions. What if Elune and the jailer once worked together? What if Elune herself did not agree with, shall we say, the Shadowlands and how the Shadowlands was set up? What if that is why the Winter Queen hates her or doesn't like her very much? Elune seems to be very closely tied to the Shadowlands. Very closely tied to the Shadowlands. In fact, I want to show you guys this. What time is it, chat? What fucking time is it? Yup. Indeed. Indeed, we have to look at the fucking map. We have to. We don't have a choice. We don't have a choice. I have to look at the map. Alright. I want to show you guys something. Something we spoke about last week. What does this map tell you guys? The Emerald Dream, the Reality, the Great Beyond, Shadowlands, and the two moons. That's a closed loop system. And the sun. Yes, but the sun is an entity that the only thing we know about it is that the Taurens seem to worship it. Whether it is an actual entity, we don't know yet. What I do know for a fact is that Elune was part and parcel of building this closed loop system. I don't think any of the other cosmological forces is part of the system. Going so far as to say I don't think the Shadowlands is inside the realms of death. I don't think the Shadowlands that we are in now is part of the actual realms of death that we see there. Look at the system. You have a reality in the middle. Unfortunately, I can't stop the picture from getting bigger, right? You have reality in the middle. Then you have these lines that connect to the Emerald Dream on both sides, signifying stream goes in, stream comes out, right? On the other side, you have the exact same thing. Stream goes in, stream comes out. All of it closed loop. According to Steve Denuser, right? According to Steve Denuser, every single one of these, shall we say, you know what? If I want to show you guys this perfectly, I'm going to have to fucking save it. I deleted it the other day. So let's just save it. Here we go. Now I can show you. Okay, so you guys can see my mouse cursor, right? You have the reality, the moons, the sun, the link between the Shadowlands and reality, the Emerald Dream and reality. Now, according to Steve Denuser, right? Every single one of these cosmological forces that we have here, every single one of them, right? Every creature that belongs to them is meant to go there when they're dead. As soon as they die, they're meant to go to their respective realms. But that's not quite what we see. That's not quite what we see. We see a system that has blocked itself off from all of these other systems. And, funnily enough, we have the Naru and the Void launching attacks on the system. We have Life launching attacks on the system. We have Order, who seems to be the only one who not necessarily launch attacks on the system, but does appear to enjoy interfering with it. And then we have the Burning Legion that also seems to launch attacks consistently on the system. So at some point, I believe that all of the Titans that we see right now, all of the Titans, all of the Eternal ones that we see right now, I believe they all come from this realm, including Elune. Including Elune. They all come from Order. But they don't come from Order. And this discussion we've had before. They think they come from Order. They actually come from Light. Because at the end of the day, there's only two powers in this entire universe. It's Light and Void. These are the only two powers that exist in the universe. Light and Void. I mean, the Titans say that, right in the beginning of Chronicles. In the beginning, there was an ocean of light. The ocean of light exploded outwards into the great beyond. Wherever the clashes between the light and the void was greatest, the foul was born. It never tells us about the existence of death. It never really tells us about the existence of life. Life was created in here, in this little closed loop system. And I believe that at some point, the jailer and perhaps Elune as well made a deal. A deal with the void. Either to bring balance or maybe to destroy. This is why I think Elune is the broken goddess. This is why I believe Elune, she has no control over herself because she is constantly fighting to keep control of her life. If Steve Denuser was correct in how all of this is meant to be built, the Emerald Dream would just be life. And the Shadowlands would just be death. So you would have reality in the middle here, a line going from reality into death, coming out of death, and a line going from reality into life and coming out of life. That's literally how it would have looked. Why is the Emerald Dream in the Shadowlands connected to reality but not connected to anything else? What Zuval's cosmic map looks like. Also look at Azeroth. There are 4 runes around her. Going with your theory that runes are used for imprisoning, that would also mean this world is a prison, that Savannah says. I mean, 100%. I never even noticed these fucking runes. Hold up. Is these runes actually on the normal cosmological map? Hold the phone, ladies. Hold the fucking phone. It is. Yeah, the runes are actually there. Fuck, I never even saw these. It is a closed loop system, motherfuckers. Holy shit. If we are correct, and these runes is representative of prisons, because this is every single time we see these runes, something is being locked up inside of it. Every single time we see these runes, something is being locked up inside of it. Look at the runes all around this system. This world is a prison. She's correct. You go into the Shadowlands, you are reborn. Go into life, you are reborn. This system is meant to keep all of the other systems at bay, to allow for infinite power. That's what these systems are meant to be. That's why she has to break the Shadowlands. You're very correct. If she breaks the Shadowlands, she breaks the cycle. Now, years ago at this point, 2 years ago maybe, actually longer than 2 years ago, in Legion, when I first started doing speculation, right? Literally just after I transitioned from Warlock content to, who pointed this out again? Because I do absolutely, I agree with Killjoy Crimes there. You deserve all the love in the fucking world for that. Escape Bridges, Lockdog, both of you, thank you so much for pointing this out, because it is quite massive. But looking at this, you are right. There seems to be more runes around the arcane side, but it does appear to be Order that keeps creating these prisons, right? Because the Titans themselves also have these runes on them, Sargeras specifically. But I had this speculation theory years ago at this point about Sargeras. And I made the following point. I just asked the question in one of my videos. And at the time, people said, bro, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This is wrong, right? I asked, what if what Sargeras wanted to do was to destroy the cycle? You see, the way I looked at it then was the Titans described this ocean of light that exploded outwards into the great beyond. But what if what they were describing is the natural ebb and flow of the universe? In other words, the light and the void is in a constant battle. Xal'atath tells us this when she speaks to you about the Draenei. Do the Draenei know about those who came before them? That the battle between the light and the void has waged for eternity, right? The light gets pushed back by the void into an ocean, literally being encircled by the void into a singular point, and then gets fucking... Then the light fights back and it explodes outwards, right? So the void fights and fights and fights, and because the void is all-powerful, because they see everything, they constantly destroy everything and then pushes the light into this ocean. The light then explodes outward, right? Literally getting all its forces together, and then explodes outward, and it creates a new universe. And then the void pushes back in again and eventually pushes the light into a little circle again, and then explodes back outwards. So I sort of got this idea that what if this is a circle? So continuously, it's like our universe. Take our universe, for example. At some point, our sun will run out, and it will create a black hole that will swallow our universe. If a black hole gets big enough and it swallows enough, it will hopefully eventually at some point create a new universe, right? So it will just continuously, the universe will continuously expand and eventually collapse in on itself, and then expand again and collapse in on itself, and then a big bang will follow again. The big bang is effectively what is explained at the beginning of the Chronicles, right? They effectively describe a big bang. An ocean of light in the middle that explodes outwards, that's a big bang, right? Imagine you have a Titan that sort of understands that this is happening, and that consistently the void wins, and then the light does it again. But you want to stop this cycle from happening. Wouldn't it then make sense to destroy all life? Because if all life is destroyed, the void would have nothing to feed on to get strong enough to defeat the light. Right? So that was sort of the crux of my theory back then. Of course, we learned a hell of a lot more since then. I'm not saying I still believe in that theory. I'm just saying it's an interesting thing to think about. It's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, to bring this all back to Elune, like I said, I believed for a long time that Elune is in fact balance. But what if she isn't? I'm not saying she isn't. I'm saying what if she isn't? What if Elune is in fact broken? Constantly going back and forth, light, void, destruction, creation, life, death. She is in a constant state of flux, and the moon that is meant to show balance is actually to show the consistent fractured nature of Elune. Now, chat. Theories. What do you guys think? Where do you fall on this?